Hello, everybody, and welcome to the special edition episode of Star Wars Episode 6 Return of the Jedi.
It's special?
On the Disney Plus version that I've watched, all the versions of the original trilogy are the special editions.
Oh my god, okay. Because I noticed something, and I had noticed it before, and then I forgot all about it.
Would that be towards the end of the movie that you're noticing?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Okay.
okay, we're thinking the exact same thing. All right.
Again, welcome to Movie Reel. I am Samantha Tomlinson.
And I am Kevin Tracy. Welcome back, everybody, for our exciting conclusion of the Star Wars Orig Trig.
Yay, we made it through Star Wars month.
Woo!
We're talking about Return of the Jedi, which is I think this might be, again, I flip-flop all the time. I think this one's my favorite of the Orig
This one,
Trig.
this one, this one does have like my favorite like climax.
I do
For
think
the
this is
movies.
my of the originals. I prefer this lightsaber fight to the one, even though the one in Empire is way more famous. Because we find out Darth Vader is Anakin Skywalker. But this one, the conflict internally between Darth Vader and separately with Luke are just so high. The tension is
Yeah,
just so much higher because in the last one it was more of I need to save my friends, and this
and this
time it
one is
and
like
and
I need to save my father without killing each other.
so are you caught up? Are you watching the Mandalorian docu series?
I've only seen the first episode so far. I'm been
Okay,
kind of holding off watching it until like all comes out, and then I was just gonna binge it.
okay, it's because I don't want to, again, I don't want to spoil it, and it's
No,
probably
no, 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 no,
nothing
no.
you
It's
know.
totally. I'm gonna watch it anyway. You can go ahead.
It's so because Dave Filoni, I talked a little bit about this last time, but I really want to talk about it because my jaw had dropped, and I even the directors in the room with him were all like even they were like, oh man, like it was such an intense, deeper level thinking of the whole arc of Star Wars, and like
Mhm.
I've said, they don't just talk about just the original. They talk about they haven't really talked as much about the sequels, but they more talk about the prequels and the originals just as a whole because it is one story.
Yeah,
Whether you love or hate the sequels, it doesn't matter. They are
yeah.
part of the story
Yeah,
because
and it does make sense for like Dave Filoni to not really talk about the sequels because he had no part of that. He was roped in like working solely on Star Wars Clone Wars
yeah,
to tie like the prequels to the original trilogy and kind of have like a more seamless, cohesive single story that spanned like these like generations. And the sequels were just kind of like an extension of a story that he helped iron out a
yeah,
lot of like the rough edges that the prequels kind of brought up.
because the sequels, we didn't necessarily need the sequels. We needed the prequels. We needed to
Yes.
know there was a side of the story we didn't know, and we needed that. And what he talks about is how the heart of it is really about how the heart of the story is about family, and it wasn't something that this was not something I really thought that much about. I definitely thought it was like internally, good versus bad and stuff like that. But he says how the fight in Phantom Menace, like that's your favorite, with Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, and
And Darth
Darth
Maul.
Maul. That's your favorite
It
fight scene, and
it is it's so good.
he was making the point how everybody loves this fight scene, but they don't really think about what it's really about. For me, it's not the fight scene that I am against. I do like it. It's a cool fight scene. It's just for me, my issue with it was I just felt like the buildup wasn't very good. So it wasn't really the fight. It was just the lead up to that wasn't
Yeah.
very strong, which is part of some of the problems with Phantom Menace. But they make the point how Qui Gon was miles ahead and was way more progressive than any of the other Jedi because he didn't really think that having an because attachments, that's what Jedi aren't really supposed to have, attachments. And
Yeah,
he felt that
yeah, only on like rare occasions do the council allow like Jedi or any members of the council to have like any kind of attachments.
And he makes the point that he understands he's leaving his mother. He essentially isn't just fighting against Darth Maul. He's fighting for Anakin. He's fighting to be, because he would be his father. And Dave Filoni makes the
You
point
you
that,
you mean his master?
I mean, yes, but he would have been his father figure.
Oh,
Obi-Wan was not his father. Obi-Wan eventually
gotcha.
kind of becomes his brother, but he's not really his father. I kind of never really thought of them as, I don't know, maybe it's because they are so opposite. I never really
I
felt like they were quite like brothers, but they weren't quite like father son. They were just kind of,
Well, I mean, at one point during episode 2, when like Padme's all like, "Wait, you're just gonna leave him on Geonosis to die?" Is like he's your master. He's like your brother. He's like my
yeah.
father. He says like
He
he's like my father. So
but
I
he
totally
it's
see
like
where
they're
you're coming
kind of
from on
he
that.
is kind of like his father, but he is essentially, but Filoni makes the point that he isn't, regardless, he's not the father Qui-Gon would have been, because Qui-Gon understood more what was he was going through, whereas, and he makes the point that Obi-Wan looks at Anakin more like in the beginning like Jar Jar, and not in the sense of, in the sense of like, why do we need to bring him with us? Like, we don't really need him. That kind of, and he, does train him, but he only really trains him because of Qui-Gon. But anyway, Qui-Gon's fighting for him because he would have been a father that Anakin needed. And as the story goes on, and then it becomes Luke trying to save his father, the very end, he essentially realizes he has to become the father and save his
Yeah,
son, become the father he never was and save his son. And when he, like, this whole arc, and the fact that it all started from Phantom Menace, again, whether you like it or not, Phantom Menace is part of this story. And I was just like, my jaw like dropped because I never thought about it this way, especially Qui-Gon. I never really gave him that much. I never really gave him that much
yeah.
of a
Well,
thought.
yeah, because he's only in
Um,
the one movie, and for the most part, he only serves as like kind of like a driving force to get Anakin into like his starting position with him and Obi-Wan. Outside of that, he didn't really serve that much of a major
yeah,
role, unless like
but
unless
the
you
whole
like read
point
like all like
is,
the
yeah,
other
yeah.
like stories that he's a part of.
But the whole point of it is that he's way more important than, I mean, I initially thought, because if he hadn't died, if that fight had gone differently, you know, Anakin would have ended up
Yeah,
differently. And it's very, maybe Anakin wouldn't have even have brought balance to the Force. Like, the whole, it's just this very crazy thing that I never really gave it much thought. And his interpretation of it was just mind blowing, and how it all leads up to Return of the Jedi. And that's the thing that I find so funny, is because I do think if you're going to watch Star Wars for the first time, you should watch the originals, then watch the prequels, then watch the sequels. But uh, it's kind of funny because we do have the prequels now. It's harder to view it in that order, because knowing what we eventually will know through the prequels, and how, like, the conflict Anakin Skywalker was dealing with prior, and the fact that he was married, and he, like,
yeah,
all these other factors play into this conflict, which, when we first start Return of the Jedi, so yeah, the beginning is the imperialists are building another Death Star, and this is the first time we really get to actually officially meet the Emperor, whereas the rebels, Luke and Leia and C-3PO and R2, are saving Han,
from Jabba.
and from Jabba. But I just, even when the first time we really meet the Emperor, just the way it blew my mind, and how amazing this acting is. Not just like Darth Vader, he's just walking. He's not doing anything. Again, he doesn't have a face. He doesn't have facial expressions. I could just feel the conflict radiating off him.
Oh, absolutely, and that does kind of like bring up one of the things that a lot of people have the problem with, like the special edition versions of this movie towards the end that we kind of talked about a little bit. It kind of defeats the purpose to give him dialogue when seeing him have conflict, even though you see no facial expressions, through his body language and how he's kind of like shifting about, says a lot more than actually just straight up saying it, and just kind of dumbs it down for the audience.
I mean, the whole time he's saying, I don't have a conflict, there is no conflict. And the thing is, you. you know he has conflict based on his behavior, not actually not his more yeah his body language, not as much obviously his voice,
Yeah.
and again the lack of facial expressions. But I don't know. I think it's because again, Star Wars is one of those things that's so embedded in our culture that I obviously knew what was going to happen, so I never
Yeah.
really gave it that much. I never really analyzed it at the time because like I knew how it all turned out. But this time, I think after watching that Dave Filoni discussion, and he said like at the end, he's like, I felt that I really thought Luke going to the dark side was on the table. Like I really felt like that was gonna happen. And I feel like I didn't really I still kind of am debating if I felt that was on the table. I think right up until the very end when he could have, I thought maybe, but I more again, I knew it was going to happen. I more just felt was more aware of the conflict within Darth Vader than
Um,
I was before.
there was actually I think like around like the time like a couple years or so after this movie came out, there was a very like short-lived comic series called I think it was just called Star Wars What If, and it was like one minor change in the story in each one of like the original trilogy movies. Like, what if during the attack on the Death Star they they don't manage to blow up the Death Star in time, and the Rebel base blows up, and they have to continue on and fight the rebellion from that point forward? Or what if Leia never gets rescued from the Death Star and gets turned to the dark side and becomes like an imperial diplomat, and so on and so forth? And it's just really cool kind of seeing like all these like what if alternatives, and like how easily in these like stories Luke is turned to the dark side, and how easily um it is for one to kind of fall from like good graces and like slip to something so easily. And it's just a really cool kind of transition on how one small change can just kind of ruin the whole thing for the good guys. So it is kind of cool seeing how, if Luke was to kind of become the bad guy, like there are versions of that where that does happen.
I love stories like that where that's kind of why I became so obsessed with David Filoni's interpretation, because I never really thought about if Qui-Gon had survived, that whole this whole story would have been very different
Yeah,
and
like
maybe not exist.
like on
I never
yeah
analyzed it like that.
yeah like on YouTube, there's like so many. There's like a full like series of videos of like Star Wars, like what if like the rebels uh like reprogram like battle droids from like the Clone Wars to fight in the rebellion, or what if Leia became like the chosen one instead of Luke? It yeah, there's just like a lot of really cool stuff like that.
on on the internet, I've been seeing so many images that everybody apparently really wanted the end. We don't have to get too into it, but Rise of Skywalker, they all wanted to see Rey go to the dark side, and they all said like, "Let's give us something different. Why didn't they do that?" Blah blah blah. And at first, I'm like, you wanted it to end with her become going to the dark side, and they win. The rebels lose. Like, what do you mean? Like, and then I was thinking, is it then in that case Ben would have maybe not died? Like, I didn't. I do think that would have been interesting, but I think that would have been more interesting if she went to the dark side in the second one, and then the third one was about them pulling her out of it.
Yeah, that would have been more.
That would have been a good arc. That would have been a good arc.
It would have been really cool. But yeah, it was. I haven't really paid too much attention to like any like the Ray theories too much, but it,
Yeah.
when watching like the sequels, and that's one thing I love about Star Wars, is that no matter which order you watch them in, each trilogy is its own condensed story that you
Yeah.
can watch in any order, and I absolutely love that. And you still kind of
Agree.
have like connections to the previous stories. But for the sequel trilogy, the conflict with Rey and like any potential like her turning to the dark side, there was like zero. They made it seem like there was zero chance of like her turning to the dark side in any way. Like every time like
To be
Kylo would like,
fair,
yeah, like, but like every time like Kylo was like trying to just like, you should join me, go to the dark side, and just like, no, like there was no like real like debate with her. It's just like, no, you're the bad guy,
yeah,
I'm the good guy. let's fight. Like that was it.
But
Like shut
here
down completely throughout the entire trilogy.
here's my thing about that, because obviously Kylo was far more conflicted, and Rey was more conflicted with what she finds out about herself as opposed to her actually being curious about the dark side. But I will say it has just become a trope in heroes' journeys of the bad guy saying, "Join me." And so I don't really have an issue with them just shutting it down, because I do think you almost, because I feel like I've seen it more times than I can count of
Oh yeah, no,
"Join
it.
me." No, never. When it's like, why even ask? They know they're gonna say no. So I kind of, I'm okay with them just shutting it down because it's something she would never do. I can get on board with that. I think if it was told, again, I think it's been established this wasn't a very cohesive story, and that's pretty disappointing. But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah. But you know what is a cohesive story? Original Trig.
Yes.
Original Trig.
The
I
Rich
will say,
Rich.
so something that I noticed in Empire, because A New Hope, obviously they didn't realize it was going to be the hit that it was. Empire is one of the greatest sequels of all time, but I will say by Return of the Jedi, I feel like they like hit their stride. I felt like there weren't as many of these teeny tiny little inconsistencies, other than Lando still calling him Han.
Honestly, I think that was just Billy D. Williams. I don't think that had anything to do with his character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, but I felt like the whole story seemed to flow. To me, out of all of them, this story flowed the best. They hit their stride. They figured out
Yeah,
what they
no,
were doing.
this movie, I felt like it has like honestly like one of like the best like opening scenes. I feel like it did kind of lull a bit in the middle, but then it like picks back up and has like one of like my favorite like climaxes for like the Star Wars movies. Jumps
Mm.
between like perspectives of like this epic space fight, which is one of my favorite space fights in the Star Wars series, kind of like up there with like Rogue One, and like the battle,
Yeah,
like this like huge battle on Endor, and then like this like very like internal and physical fight between Luke and Vader, like right in front of the Emperor, and it's just all three of these happening at the same time, and like all three of these scenes are pivotal for the success of like the entire mission, because if one of them fails, then they all fail. It's like, damn, this is some high stakes
yeah,
poker right here.
yeah, exactly. And it's yeah, this one has the highest
Oh,
stakes.
absolutely.
The first one, other than what it's like they stumble into it, the high
Yeah,
stakes, and the second one, it's not really, it's more high stakes for Luke in terms of, is he going to be ready. But this one, the
like
cards they're dealt.
anyone and
And
everyone can die basically at any point.
yes.
Like in,
um
because especially in the last line, we can see like this series isn't afraid of watching like the villains or like the heroes like take a huge loss. Like the last one, like Luke loses a hand, Han gets captured, and everyone else gets tortured. It's like, okay, holy shit, what's gonna happen in this one?
so yeah, we start off with, the Emperor is going to be coming to the base because they're, I guess, behind and whatnot. And you can see, like, they're also just terrified. They're like, oh shit, the Emperor's coming
It's
here.
like we shall double our efforts. Like, I hope so, Commander, for your sake. Okay.
What is the Emperor's job? It seems like I mean, is he, I mean, running the galaxy, I guess? It seems like Darth
Yeah,
Vader's doing all the work.
pretty much. Darth Vader is like, by extension, he's like whatever I say goes, because the only other person I report to is the Emperor. Everyone else is directly under me.
Yeah.
Um, so in a sense, he is kind of like running like things. And like Darth Vader is more sense like the main like military like general for the Empire. He's like the main like opposing force for everyone else in the galaxy. The Emperor kind of runs things on a more governmental like level, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense.
As is his
And everyone else,
background.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, which makes sense. But yeah, in order to kind of like maintain a more reasonable control, because one person can't run like the entire galaxy,
Yeah.
he appoints like Tarkin. His position was a Grand Moff, which was basically like a regional governor of
Oh,
like
I always thought
a
that was his
series of
name.
planets. No,
Yeah.
that's like an admiral or
Okay.
something. It's like a rank or a
Okay.
title.
First grade.
Um,
Grand Moff?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, they're like moffs, which are basically just like regional governors of like certain planets, and like a grand moff is like in charge of all of those governors. So he's like a so like a moff is basically like a mayor of a planet, and like a grand moff is like a senator of like several planets, and is in charge of all of those moffs,
Okay.
if that makes
Okay.
sense.
Okay.
Yeah,
Ooh.
and it's pretty much just broken down like that for like the majority of the galaxy.
Okay. And so after that, we then, yeah, C3PO and R2 are headed to Jabba's palace. There clearly is this very elaborate plan to break Han out. And I mean, I know it does seem like it does go a little bit better than they expected. Like,
Yeah,
and I was wondering
but
how much of the plan does everybody know? Because it seems like C3PO and R2 did not know that Luke was going to give them as gifts, air quotes. And
or at least 3PO didn't know.
and Leia, I couldn't tell if she was very surprised that Lando was there. Or not that he was
Yeah,
there,
I
but he was, because C3PO and R2 were saying Lando didn't come back. And so I'm guessing, is it the same thing as like R2 and C3PO? He just kind of stayed as to like, you know, kind of lay out the groundwork so his friends can help break out Han.
I feel like this like them breaking Han out was just a series of multiple just like covert missions that suddenly went bad, and to cover up for it he sent more of like everyone in to kind of like pick up where they left off, and it's like, all right, well, everyone's in there.
But
Well,
yeah,
we got enough people in there, and like half of them are like working for Jabba now, so it's like, this seems like a good move now.
so yeah, and then C3P and R2 go in and they're given us gifts and they're like, "What?" Like by like Luke's hologram. And then we see this bounty hunter come in with Chewie, who we then learn later that
Yep.
it's Leia. And after she unfreezes Han, I was thinking if she had just grabbed him and dragged him out, I'm wondering, would they have just gotten out? Then they just got to deal with getting R2 and C3PO and Chewie back.
I feel like getting them out would be a lot easier because they don't have to be thought out.
Yeah. But I mean, or get them all at once.
Yeah, and honestly, I feel like the hardest person to get out of there would be Chewie because he's in a dungeon, and like R2 and 3PO is like, you just need to remove like the restraining bolt, and it's like, all right,
Yeah.
they can just walk out the door. But yeah, it just seemed like a series of just plans that went wrong, and they just kind of improvised around that to make it work in their favor.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because they never explain, as far as I know, they never explain how Lando even got into his like starting position of undercover as a guard there.
Yeah.
Like he just like as it just, yeah, like you said, like 3PO was like, oh, Lando never came back from his job. Well, I hope he's okay. And it's just like, oh no, he's just there. He's just wearing a disguise. Like, how did you kill the guy who wore that before and have just been assuming his identity for the past few days? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
how did that happen?
And I can't tell, Leia seems kind of surprised that he's there, but he's there longer than her.
Yeah, and it's very unclear if she knew he was supposed to be there. Never, she doesn't say anything about it like at all throughout this entire movie or in that scene. We just kind of see her face for like a second when they make eye
Yeah.
contact, and I think that's after Luke shows up.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And Luke,
yeah,
I know, because I'm watching so much Clone Wars lately, and first of all, Clone Wars is it's becoming hilarious because every time we meet a new character that's gonna have a role later, I'm just watching, I'm just thinking like Anakin's gonna kill you and you and you and you, like you are all dead.
to be fair, a lot of the Jedi that you meet do
I
live.
know, but a lot of them die. but
Yeah,
but anyway, I realized Luke's clothes in this movie are very, or at least in this first scene, are very similar to what Anakin wears just before he goes to the dark side.
yeah.
Now he does wear black the whole movie, and that's because there's the conflict and the question of whether he's going to go to the dark side.
And also when he first shows up, he like force chokes the like Jabba's guards. Like, that doesn't seem like a Luke thing to do. He's just killed two guys.
He basically says like, release my friends. And okay, so Okay, this is the first time we see Leia in the very infamous gold bikini.
The the slave Leia.
And I
Yep.
gotta say, I I do think, if anything, I if it's more of a show of how gross Jabba is. The fact that not only it made me think of like an Austin Powers when they get captured, they just Doctor Evil puts them in these weird clothes, and it's like, why,
Oh yeah.
why bother? Like Jabba is gross, and the fact that
I
he
mean,
also just has that
I
line
mean,
around, like,
you see it like earlier on, like he has like a couple like he has like a dancer girl kind of wearing something similar, and also it was the 80s, so they kind of
yeah,
needed to have like it seemed like every sci-fi movie had like some like level of like sex appeal to it, and I
yeah.
felt like this movie was just like, well, I mean, this is still technically for kids, but it's the 80s, so we're gonna try it. I mean, this came out in 83, so I feel like this was, as far as like TNA goes, like this was very tame, even though like this is probably like the much more like infamous, like one of the more like memorable like outfits throughout the entire
But I gotta
series.
say, because there's that whole debate on, oh, it's just appealing to the male fantasy, and I can't believe Star Wars did that. And it's gross. Even Carrie Fisher was like, I mean, who cares? I like like she gets it, but I think she kills Jabba, so I feel like she's still badass. Her clothes are, yeah, they are really very revealing, and it is kind of whatever, but she does kill her, the guy that's imprisoning her. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I get it, but I kind of think she's still badass. So the clothes are kind of,
she kills him with the chain that he has attached to her.
which is like also poor
It's like,
planning on his end.
yeah,
And I didn't mention this before. So when Leia unfreezes Han, and he's like, "Who are you?" And she's like, "Someone who loves you." And then they kiss. This is one reason why I love Han and Leia so much, is because there was a little bit of conflict between them last time, mainly because he had to leave. But this
yeah,
time, there's no question of like, because after, in any other movie, or if any, like, if this was a show or anything, after she would have gotten him out, there would have been a whole conversation of, so before you left, I said I loved you and we kissed, and what, and there would have found some bullshit reason not to be together. Whereas this time they're but this time it's just like, screw it, they love each other, they're together. And I think I just appreciate it because it's just straightforward. I get very, when it comes to romances, I'm all for conflict, but sometimes it's like, enough, we get it, just it gets repetitive, and this time it was just went for it.
yeah. No, I'm glad that they kind of cut to the chase, because I feel like if they film this now, it's just like, oh, it's like as soon as like Fron or Han gets
Fraud.
unfrozen, Fron,
Frozen
sorry,
Han. Fraud.
yeah, when Han gets unfrozen from carbonite and is like, oh, it's like, Leia, I love you. It's like Leia just like stops and it's like, no, there's been someone else. You've been gone for so long. It's me and Akbar are a thing
Ugh.
now.
um Actually, I looked it up because this is 3 years after Empire, but I think
Yeah.
in the world of Star Wars it's only been about a year, which makes more sense.
Um.
That's, at least that's what I had
Yeah.
read, and that makes way more
I.
sense,
It's something like that. Yeah.
because it's like, yeah, why
And
3 years?
there's actually a deleted scene like right before Luke sends R2 and 3PO to Jabba's palace. He like sends them out of like this cave like outside of Jabba's palace, and you see him constructing his green lightsaber that he uses for the rest of this movie, since he lost his last
I
one.
was wondering about that because
Since his hand gets cut
I
off.
was wondering about that because yeah, he gets a new lightsaber, but does he, I mean, he know, I mean, he I would believe he could figure out how to construct one, but where is he going to get the
um
materials? Is there
Um, I mean, I'm sure Yoda kind of told him at some point when they were training,
Mhm.
and there are like various like locations like in the galaxy where Jedi usually go on like pilgrimages to find like a kyber crystal to make their
Mhm.
lightsaber, and I just assumed that there would be like scattered like lightsaber parts in like those areas as well for him to build one.
That's also a storyline that was in season 2 of Clone Wars that I really liked.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Yeah, pretty much everyone's been captured, and Luke is saying like, "Hey, you're gonna regret this if you don't let my friends go." And obviously, Jabba calls his bluff, and they're all about to die. And I love this part so much because he's not afraid at all, but also
Yeah.
he willingly jumps off of
Oh,
a plank,
oh,
flips off.
oh, wait, but before that, before they get to that point, when Luke first confronts Jabba, I was like, "Hey, I want you to let all my friends go, or else I'm going to have to destroy you." And he drops him into a
Oh
trap
yeah,
door
sorry.
under his throne. And earlier, he dropped one of his dancers down there, and she gets eaten by this ferocious looking monster. But we don't see it until Luke falls in there with accidentally with one of Jabba's guards, and it's the Rancor, and it is one of like it's a very like iconic looking monster at this point. It's just this giant, big, hulking mass of claws and teeth. And Luke falls in there completely unarmed because he gave his lightsaber to R2 to keep for later. Um,
Which was
but
smart
and
planning.
he he
He didn't take the
yeah,
Rancor into account.
yeah, no, oh, not at all. He's able to kill this thing in like no problem whatsoever. He manages to trap this thing under a trap door and closes it on its neck, and it just impales itself and dies. It's like,
He then
holy shit, dude.
he gets out and other people start to come in and one of them's like crying over the monster
Yeah, it's
dying.
like I felt like that was such an unnecessary scene, but I can't help but laugh at that
Yeah.
now. It's like because it's just this very like out of shape like middle aged man. He's got like a beer gut and he's wearing like almost like a turban. I guess it's just kind of like this leather like bandana flap that goes down to his
I
shoulders.
gotta, yeah,
Um,
I gotta,
and he just starts crying.
yeah, I gotta say the costumes in this are the design for some of the costumes and the makeup. Some of them look really great, and some of them, to me, kind of don't really hold up, and they look kind of weird. Especially the
Yeah.
blue
Um,
guy, the elephant.
Oh, Max Rebo? You leave Max Rebo
I'm
alone. He is a precious
I'm
angel.
sure he is, but he doesn't look. I mean, I know that's a costume. It looks a little too much like a costume to me. But yeah, I know. Like he looks. He's not doing any harm. He's there, but it looks like a costume.
Yeah. What did you think of like Jabba's band? Like the song, like the dance, like what was like your overall impression of like the
I mean, it's a lot more a lot catchier. Not catchier, but it's different than the cantina, and some of those same creatures
Yeah.
there. But it's got that weird
Yeah.
frog singer who was in Clone Wars, and I was like, what the hell is this
Uh,
thing?
oh yeah. And yep, that's the exact same
Yeah,
character
I
too.
figured.
Cy Snoodles
Um,
or Snipe, yeah, something like
I
that.
will say this scene. I know it kind of goes on for like a few seconds too long. It
Yeah.
it
I feel like it doesn't like last too long that it like overstays its welcome.
no
I feel
no
like it
yeah
goes on just long enough to just like, okay, that's enough.
yeah exactly. But I gotta say, so this character, Ula, she's the one that she's gets thrown into the pit with the man. Of course, she is 50 on Rolling Stone's top 50 Star Wars characters because like she doesn't. Job is pulling her towards him, and she's rejecting him, and it's kind of the whole point is that it's pretty badass of her to risk death as opposed to just
Yeah,
obeying Jabba. So I thought that was like a
yeah,
nice, that was cool.
and also a fun fact that that same actress who plays that character when George Lucas was redoing this scene for the special edition, that actress reprised her role because she like was like I'm still in shape to do that role. They refilmed the scenes and she put on like the costume and everything and refilmed the scene. So her and whenever you watch the special editions, that's her like 20 years after it was initially filmed.
Really? Oh, I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
yeah. It's like she looks exactly the same, and it's like oh, it's like, oh, we're redoing this, and she like found out about it. It's like, hey, do you need me to redo this? Like, it's like, well, do you still look the same? It's like exactly the same. It's like, all right, come on down.
That's pretty cool. Um,
Yeah,
Good for her. Yeah. Uh,
yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, back to the Sarlacc pit.
So yes, I really like the scene, especially because Luke. It's pretty bad. He just willing. He says like, Jabba, it's your last chance. Free us or die. They push him in, or he actually kind of jumps in, grabs the plank, flips himself up. He's just very like. I think what I like about it is it's not him. I mean, I guess he is kind of thinking on his feet, but this is why I say that the plans seem to go very well because even though yes, they keep hitting these pitfalls, I mean, they killed Jabba. Like they got everyone out. It just seemed like it worked out a little bit better than they probably originally had planned.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Although it does kind of leave like kind of an implication because they just killed a massive like underworld boss. So they did also at the same time they did kill like a very bad guy. Like objectively, Job is a bad guy.
yeah.
But they did also at the same time kind of create a power vacuum that is going to need to get filled at some point. Um,
Oh,
which which I feel like is going to lead some like very like intense implications that hopefully we'll kind of see in the Mandalorian because we never really see that side of it, and it does kind of take place like a few years after the
yeah,
Empire falls.
yeah.
So hopefully we do see something like that. And there are other huts, and I think there's still like a few still left alive that are like still connected to like the Hutt family that would kind of like try to take up like the rest of like the slack
What
that
about Jabba's
Jabba now
son?
has left.
Do we know what happened to him?
He never really, yeah, he never really gets mentioned again as far as I know. After like
I didn't even know he
the
had
move,
a son before Clone Wars.
yeah, yeah, neither did I until I saw that. Yeah, he shows up in the movie in like maybe 2 episodes in the series, and outside of that, he's never really mentioned again as far as I know.
Yeah. Um.
Which is kind of weird. There are a few other huts that like I mean you saw like the Hut Council,
Yeah.
like there's like a few of them, but I honestly don't even remember how many of them actually survived the end of the Clone Wars.
So Luke's fighting, and Han is blind, and he's just kind of like
Yeah, and
leaning on Chewie, and
he
then Lando falls over, and they're trying to save him while he's still blind. Like I mean, it's very like good for you, Han, but it's also really funny because he's like, oh, like, well,
it's like, wait, I thought you were blind. It's all right, I can see a lot better now.
yeah, and yeah, Luke's just jumping between the what are they like? They're what you call them?
Like
They're like mini
there's
ships,
sand
sand skips.
skiffs.
He's like jumping between them
Yeah,
and battling everyone. And then yeah,
there.
Leia kills Jabba. She makes her escape, and they. This is what I love because I mentioned this on our first Star Wars episode when they are on the Death Star and Luke and Leia swing across the chasm. It's it's
Yeah.
funny because it's just very like they're barely holding on to each other. And this time Leia grabs onto him. He's all in black, she's in the bikini. It's a very cliche, like heroic image. But this time, like the swing is a lot
Oh
more
yeah,
stable and
yeah. It looks like yeah, it looks like something like straight out of like a romance
but
novel.
it's just funny because it's so much more like it's not as because before it was the first time it was very awkward and this time it was they had clearly like they had
Yeah.
both grown so much and it was very I don't know, I love that comparison, but yeah, they all
They're
get off. Yeah.
during the time when Luke's like jumping between like the skiffs fighting some of Jabba's guards. There are two things I wanted to point out during this. Is one is during the fight, one of the actors, I guess, misses his cue
Oh.
because you see Luke kick at him, and you see him not make contact with this guy, and yet the guy still recoils from getting kicked in the face.
I
Uh,
didn't notice
and
that.
it's a really quick thing. He literally like jumps in front of this guy, kicks, and the guy just like flails, throws his gun in the air, and just like recoils from getting kicked in the face, but not really. And I guess you can chalk it up as like, oh, he used the force. Then why did he kick? Um, and another thing is at one point, Boba Fett is like, you see him, he fires a shot at Luke, misses by a mile, and this is supposed to be like one of like the best bounty hunters, and this is he's like fires a shot, misses by a mile, and then he gets hit by Han and like falls into the Sarlacc pit and gets eaten.
Yeah,
But it's like, but dude, you had a solid shot. You had like a good few seconds, and he squeezed off a shot, and then he gets hit. It's like,
I had to go back.
how'd you
I forgot
miss?
that's how he died because it was
Yeah,
it was kind of a very stupid ending for Boba Fett. We thought,
yeah. I'm glad he didn't die though.
wait, he doesn't die. Wait,
He does not die. He is going to be back in Mandalorian season 2.
he he is. Wait, did they announce that?
They announced that the actor who plays Jango Fett is confirmed to come back as Boba Fett in Mandalorian season 2, along with Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka Tano. And there's also kind of a rumor about the same actor who plays Jango Fett is going to be returning as not only Boba Fett but as another character.
What?
I'm not going to say who because that is going to be some spoilers for Clone Wars, but I think you can kind of figure out who.
Oh yeah, I can figure out who. I have a really good idea. Anyway, I won't say anything, but they also actually I was gonna wait till the end to today's, but they actually announced Timothy Oliphant is going to join season 2 of The Mandalorian. I don't think there's any information on who he's playing, but he's
Ooh,
joining.
that's going to be
But I
interesting.
mean, I Timothy Oliphant's really entertaining, so I'm just so pumped for
Yeah,
season 2. Like they keep
yeah,
announcing something. I'm just so excited to see Ahsoka Tano in the Flash. Like, oh god, anyway.
dude, you're telling me
I
I've been waiting
know.
for that since 2008.
Anyway, so they escape, and the rest of the gang goes on the Millennium Falcon, except for Luke and R2, who are going back to the Dagobah system because he had said to Yoda, I'll be back.
I need to go back to finish my training.
And they go back, and I this whole sequence is so great. So Yoda this is when he says he's 900 years old, and
Yeah, which they do finally confirm his age. He's 900 years old when he dies.
he just keeps saying rest, rest, like he's about to go. And this is when Luke asks him, like, is Darth Vader my father? And he's like,
And it's
yeah,
like,
he is.
oh yeah, sorry we didn't tell you.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, not sorry.
And
then Yoda fades after that, pretty much. We get a very tacked on scene after Yoda dies of Obi-Wan Kenobi showing up as a Force ghost, kind of explaining, it's like, oh yeah, no, I did tell you that your father died. From a certain point of view, he is dead. That's not your father anymore. That's Darth Vader. Totally different person. It's like, okay, up yours, Ben. You lied to me.
I do like this scene a lot because the cinematography is really great, and there's a lot of these like dark shadows, and it's visually I love the setting for this conversation. But I mean, to be fair, yeah, Anakin Skywalker is dead, but I mean, he wasn't killed by another person named Darth Vader, which was the implication. But I mean, how do
Yeah.
you say that to someone like my dad was a Jedi? What? How did he die? Oh.
Oh, I cut off his arms and legs and left him on the edge of a river lava where he caught on fire, and I assume he burned to
I can
death.
tell you in 7 seasons.
7 seasons or less.
And this is when he's saying like, or so just before Yoda dies, he does say there is another Skywalker, and Luke, through his conversation with Obi-Wan, says, yeah, you guys were separated to keep you guys from Darth Vader and the Emperor, and he realizes it's Leia, which is like also
Yeah.
another. Do you think the audience was just like, because they already their minds were blown by Darth Vader being Luke's father? Do you think their minds were blown again? Like, what is it with you guys and blowing everybody's mind up? I can't handle this anymore. What's
I
next?
I don't know what the audience reactions would be for that. I feel like it was a lot less monumental
Yeah.
than the I am your father, because it kind of came at a more like this was very much a less dramatic scene. It was just them kind of just having a very simple, not really heated conversation. It was more of just kind of like pseudo exposition, I feel like, but it didn't seem like it would have that same impact of no, I am your father.
Yeah, I just because there's
Um,
that very famous picture of them finding out that they're siblings, and they're all like, you're all like, what? Yeah,
what? Yeah. It's like, ew, gross.
and I gotta say, it also is a real testament to Obi-Wan's character because it's really showing how the whole attachment thing, how he feels about that. Because Luke says, "No, I can't kill my father," and Obi-Wan's like, "Well, you are." Well, then there's no hope, and
Yeah, it's like, well, then we're lost. Yeah. We should have trained your sister.
that's interesting. Would have been easier for her to just kill her father, but also that's aside the point. Like the whole point of a Jedi is, you defend, you don't attack. So he can't just go and like assassinate Darth Vader. But
Yeah.
anyway, on the rebel ship,
Oh,
or wait, did I miss something?
before Luke and R2 go to Dagobah, we see a bunch of TIE fighters circling the Death Star, and it's like, wow, that's a lot of TIE fighters. What's going on? And we see this Imperial shuttle in the landing bay, surrounded by like 500 stormtroopers, and we see some Red Guard that we've never really seen before exiting the ship, and it's like, wait, is this? It's the Emperor first coming out that we see. This is the first time that the audience has seen the Emperor like live in person. We've seen him once in like a hologram in Empire Strikes Back, but this was like the first time we see him, and it's just like this feeble old man. He's just like this old man who's like hunched over using a walking stick, and it's just like, this is the most powerful man in the galaxy. This is the guy that no one can really beat.
There's another podcast I listened to, and one of them mentioned, I don't remember how this came up, but he was saying how Revenge of the Sith, he didn't really like how it gave it was trying to give a reason to why the Emperor looks this way. When he's like, I mean, the Palpatine's like 60 years old, so 20 years later, yeah, he's gonna look really old. It's like, I get it, but also if he had just aged normally, he wouldn't look like the way the Emperor looks. So like he wouldn't look as withered and wrinkled and gross and deformed.
Deformed.
Yeah. So yeah.
But yeah, no, that actually is like a common thing for the Sith, is that over time they do kind of get deformed and scarred through like their use of the dark side. Like one example of this would be Darth Sion, who pretty much just looks like his entire body is just like dry and like flaky to the point where it's like you see like entire layers of skin like on his, he almost looks like
Mm-hmm.
Two-Face. Like entire layers of like his skin are just gone, and it's just like flesh, but it's hardened to the point where it looks like skin as well, even though it's still flesh. um it's a very like morbid kind of looking Sith, and there's a lot of other ones like that, like Darth Malgus and like Darth Revan. They're well, not really Darth Revan, but they just kind of get like messed up over time through constant years of battle and like using the dark side, because it kind of corrupts the soul and the body from what it seems like it's doing. Because I mean, when you see Anakin use it in Revenge of the Sith, his eyes change color completely to like a reddish kind of
Mm-hmm.
orange. So it's like your body physically changes when you use the Force, and when you use the dark side of the Force, it changes it and kind of deteriorates your body at a much more accelerated rate.
Um. So the actor who is playing the Emperor is Ian McDiarmid, who also plays Palpatine in the prequels, and I didn't know that that was the same actor. Like I actually looked it up.
Yeah, that
I
blew my
was like,
mind.
I actually looked that up because I'm like, wait, they do look very similar. That's crazy. And then I looked it up. I was like, oh wow. Because then I thought it was funny because at the time he did this, the Ian McDiarmid was about 39 years old, and around the time or the right time this was released, he was about 39 years old, and Mark Hamill was about 30. So the fact that in reality he's only 9 years older than him, I thought was really funny.
Yeah, no, they did tremendous work in like the makeup and
Yeah.
wardrobe department to make him look, because he looks like he's 60 years old in this, like at the very
Yeah,
least.
or I mean, more like
He, they,
180. Like he looks so
yeah,
old.
yeah, he looks like a very like withered kind of like kind of like a witch, like hag kind of like type character, just like very withered, kind of mystical aura around him, and it's like, all right, I'm down. This looks really good.
So we then everybody's like I said before, that everyone's on the rebel ship and they have a plan. They got to go to Endor. So they're saying it's on the rest of the movie takes place on the moon of Endor.
The forest moon of Endor, yeah.
So it's not. Is it off a planet? It just looks like it's a moon on its own. Like there's nothing around it.
As far as I know, I don't really see anything else around it. Like, I don't think there's just a planet called Endor. This,
I'm just surprised why not make it a
like, the
planet.
planet that, yeah, I think they just try to make it some, like,
Yeah.
variety in, like, the places that they go to. It's like, oh, you're not going to a planet. You're going to a forested moon of a planet.
Whoa.
It's
That's
like,
called yeah.
oh. It's like, that's still a planet. It has an atmosphere on planet, and it sustains life. That's a planet. That's not a moon.
Yeah. Which was actually
um,
this that I mean that was all shot in California in the redwoods.
yeah, that was, yeah, which, beautiful place. It was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it seems like they were mostly in Cal. They were mostly in because I mean I know like they're in England in like the studios, but everything else seemed to be in. They were in Death Valley. They were in the Redwood National Park. They were just like all over California and Arizona. A little bit of
They did film in Africa and in Greenland, or not in Greenland, Norway. I forget exactly where they filmed Hoth. I
where
think it was
was
Norway.
Dagobah? Was that a set?
I think that was an. I think that was a set, or at least a good chunk of it for, or at least the Dagobah set for this movie. They might have filmed like somewhere on
Yeah.
location for Empire Strikes Back. I'm not 100% for that, but I do know that in at least in New Hope, they did film some scenes for Tatooine somewhere in
Mm-hmm.
Africa.
Okay. They've been in the sequels. They were in Jordan. They said.
Yeah, they were filming pretty much like a good chunk of uh, the Tatooine scenes, like primarily in Africa for the Phantom Menace Tatooine scenes. I think it was mainly for like the pod racing scenes and
Yeah.
the like the market scenes, because they needed like some kind of reference to switch back to for the pod racing scenes. It's
Mm-hmm.
like we need some good landscape shots, so
Yeah.
they kind of filmed that and then they plugged that into a computer to make it look the way it did.
Yeah. Yeah. So they gotta basically on Endor. They have to.
Destroy a shield
Yeah.
generator so
Yes.
they could send a strike team to destroy the Death Star.
Yep. That. So and the team obviously consists of Han is leading it with Leia joins and Luke and Chewie and pretty much everyone. And
Yeah, the A team and then like a random like separate set of like rebel commandos that go with them. So it's not just the A team.
yeah, so they get down there and they see a couple of stormtroopers, and I love this part because he's like, "Okay, I'm gonna go take them out," and Luke's like, "Be careful, you don't. There could be more there. Be quiet." And Han's like, "Hey, it's me," which is a basically guarantee that it's not gonna go well. Just
It's like,
his
oh, this
face.
is gonna, yeah,
And of course he steps on something and
goes wrong almost immediately.
and then Luke and Leia jump on speeders and chase after them. It's like the closest thing we get to a car chase, and it's
Yeah, pretty much. This
I
is
love
really
this scene.
like
It's
the only
really
instance of like a high speed chase.
and I mean this I don't know this scene's really fun, but they end up getting separated. Luke makes his way back. Leia is unconscious because she's thrown from her speeder. And who does she meet? The native that live on Endor, the Ewoks, the
Yep.
famous Ewoks.
Wicket the Ewok, played by the legendary actor Warwick Davis,
Of course it is.
who you might know him as Willow from Willow, also made by George Lucas, or you might know him as the Leprechaun from the Leprechaun series.
Or as Griphook and Professor Flitwick in Harry Potter. Anytime there's someone that's short, very, very short, it's going to be Warwick Davis. And I think he plays.
Or Peter Dinklage.
Well, Peter Dinklage is a little bit taller than him, right? But usually see his face. Warwick Davis goes through. I will say there is a scene. I think it's in Phantom Menace, you see his face and you're like, hey, it's Warwick Davis.
Warwick Davis is like one of the few actors who has multiple different character roles in Star Wars. Mark Hamill has a couple. Warwick Davis has like 3 or 4.
It's the same thing in Harry Potter. He's played like at least 3 different characters.
Yeah, and I think Clancy Brown, the voice actor for Mr. Krabs from SpongeBob, he has 2 as well. One of them's in Mandalorian. He's the like the muscly guy in the episode with like Bill Burr.
So they go out basically, yeah. So we get the first sighting of an Ewok, and it's like the whole thing is it's like they look so cute like stuffed animals, but they have spears and knives and
oh yeah, no, they're vicious and they'll eat you.
And you know, and Leia is like, she's being nice to it, and I'm like, you are like a Disney princess. You're friends with animal creatures that you find
instead of like
falling unconscious.
Yeah, instead of holding out your hand and a bird landing on it, just a wicket just kind of like an Ewok just like grabs your fingers like yep nup.
But then they see a a blaster shot. They hide, and of course a stormtrooper shows up, and he doesn't see the Ewok, and then the Ewok just starts using his spear and like hitting its leg until they like knock him out.
And Leia just like KOs both of them in like no time whatsoever. One thing that's really interesting about the Ewoks is that throughout this entire movie, the word Ewok is not mentioned once.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, it is never said in any sentence. It's not even in the credits. It's like they're credited as their character names. They're not mentioned as Ewoks in any way, shape, or form. Yeah, there's Wicket. There's Pablo.
Was that even said?
No.
It's okay. Well, then
no,
I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah, no, their names, nothing. They're just the furry little Build-A-Bears.
Yeah, I will say sometimes some of the costumes for the Ewoks look better than others, and a couple of them. There's one in particular. You see the padding of its foot, and it looks like fabric. It looks like felt. It doesn't really look like a padding of a paw.
Yeah, no,
I was like, oh. But...
I'm looking at the credits right now. It's credited as their individual names. Like there's Chief Chirpa, there's Logray, there's it's just not Ewoks at all. It's their actual their actual names.
This scene, they're supposed to be Wookiees.
Yeah, they were originally supposed to be a planet full of Wookiees, and for some reason they changed it to Ewoks.
Would it have been the planet? Because there is a planet.
I don't know if it would have been Kashyyyk or not, because that has basically at this point in time in like the war, like Kashyyyk has pretty much been like it is completely under Imperial control, and Ewoks, the Wookiees, are used entirely as slave labor. So for them to have it would have been really interesting. It would have kind of come across more of like a Spartacus kind of situation of like, oh, we shake off our bounds of servitude. We will stand up and fight this slave rebellion to overthrow our imperial masters kind of thing.
I'm Chewbacca.
Yeah. But it's just
Chewbacca. Yeah, exactly.
It's just them doing that, and like all those stormtroopers like, what the fuck are they saying?
I do so because I know that's why a lot of people don't like Ewoks.
Yeah, a lot of people don't like Ewoks.
I understand that, yes, that's annoying. They were supposed to be Wookiees. That would have been a lot of fun. But they're not useless. Like, they help destroy the Empire in the battle. Like,
yeah.
That's what I don't understand. I mean, yeah, like they're useful. It's not like the Porgs, the Porgs are just there.
They were there to sell toys.
They're just the animal. Yeah, they're just the animals that live on the island, and they're cute, and they're super cute, but they don't really have a purpose other than just being cute. And yeah, they were there definitely for merchandise, but I can also agree with they're just the native creatures on this planet. Yeah. I can be on board with that, but the Ewoks actually contribute. So
they contributed in a way that's like, okay, this is kind of stretching the some disbelief right here, because later on in the movie, Emperor Palpatine straight up says like, "Oh, like I know your friends are on Endor right now to destroy the shield generator. That's why I've already sent an entire legion of my best men down there." And the men that he sent down is the 501st Legion, which is the Legion of clones that Anakin had control during the Clone Wars. That this is just now the Imperial Regiment. So like you've seen enough Clone Wars that those guys kick ass.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they got beat up by Build-A-Bears to a point where this is embarrassing.
So yeah, we were jumping ahead, but
Yeah.
so Han and Luke are out looking for Leia, and they see the speeders, and they find Leia's helmet, and they're kind of panicking. And then Chewie sees some like just
Animal.
dead animal meat. He goes after it, and it's a trap. And
It's a trap. Oh, sorry, too soon.
R2 frees them. And this is that other joke because he uses something. What does he use to break Leia's chains? And then this time he uses this tiny little razor. So I
Yeah,
know there's like a joke there.
yeah. Well, I mean, the other one he used like basically like an arc welder, so like if he'd used that, he would have set the net on fire.
See, that's what I get. That's what I think. And everybody always laughs. And it's like, yeah, but this one was probably a lot safer. And they
Yeah,
got
it's like
out
it's
just
like
as
yeah,
fast. It like
it's like
doesn't
using
really.
a yeah, it's like using a blowtorch on toilet paper. It's like that's not going to go well for anyone involved. It's like yeah,
Yeah.
you're going to turn yourself into a Molotov cocktail if you tried that, bud.
So they get released, and then they are surrounded by Ewoks, and they think C-3PO is some sort of god. And I really love this
Yeah.
scene because they're, Han just wants to fight them all, and Luke's like, no, don't bother, and just give them your weapons. And C-3PO's like, oh, they think I'm some type of god. And Han's just like, well, then can you help us get out of this? And he's like, I can't. It's against my nature to pretend to be a deity. And
Yeah.
I think I just love this part because Han is just so fed up with C-3PO, and Luke is just laughing in the background because this conversation is so stupid.
It really is.
They're literally fighting over the fact that a droid doesn't want to pretend to be a god. That's the conversation, and Luke's just behind them, just trying not to laugh.
Oh,
I love it because it humanizes the whole situation.
and it's the fact that it's like not only does 3PO not want to be a god, he doesn't want to be a god to a bunch of teddy bears.
And they are then taken to their village, their tree
Their
village,
tribe.
and they're about to cook Han.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
these
things are not cannibals, but I mean these things are like full on carnivores.
And Leia comes out, and they apparently gave her new clothes, and they do her hair.
I was about to say, is like, are you gonna mention that they braided her hair? I knew you were gonna fucking mention that.
Well, okay, it's not just that they braided her hair; they unbraided it to put like something in it. But then she just the next day, like she just braids it back and just keeps it in. Like it doesn't really make a difference. It's more just funny that they, I don't know, hospitality,
Yeah.
So Han is about to be
burnt at a stake.
Set aflame, and he's just like hanging on above they're about to set the fire, and then he sees Leia, and he's just like, Leia, and it's like, don't you want to be like, hey, Leia? Like, I thought wouldn't there be a little more urgency? Like, oh my god, we found you, but also, hey, I'm about to be burnt.
Yeah, I'm about to become a spit roast over this fire. Can you help me out here?
And Luke says like, C-3PO, like, tell them you'll use your magic powers on them if they don't let us go. And he's like, what? And then of course, Luke just uses the Force and lifts 3PO up into the air in his chair, and they end up letting him go. And then the next scene is them.
3PO's telling him the entire story of Star Wars.
He's reenacting everything, and then he's like, "We are now part of the." Oh, I love. Oh wait, really quick. They're part of the tribe after he tells the story.
Yeah.
But just before this, you see like one of the Ewoks is grabbing onto Han's leg, like it's scared. It's just so like, okay. And then we are now part of the tribe, and then everyone's like, all of them are hugging.
Yeah, they're celebrating Han, like crazy.
So I realized we skipped when they are first landing, trying to sneak onto Endor. So they're using a Imperial, small Imperial ship, and they're using a code, like an older code. And we find out way later that the Emperor is the one that gave them the code so that they could sneak on to the moon.
Yeah.
But Luke's freaking out because he's like, Vader's on that ship. He can sense me, I can sense him, like I'm endangering everybody by being here. And then after the retelling of Star Wars, Luke kind of he's telling Leia he has to go because Darth Vader is here. I can sense him, and I'm just being a danger to everybody. And this is when he says, okay, first of all, he says that he's her brother, but he says, "Do you remember your mother?" And she's like, "I mean, well, mostly feelings. She died when I was young." And I'm like,
Yeah.
she died when you guys were born. Now, the thing is,
Yeah.
I can't fault them. We're supposed to fault Revenge of the Sith. And I will say how, like, it wouldn't have really made a ton of sense for her to live, like, a year, and then just die. Like, they still would have had to separate everybody. It wouldn't, I don't know. So I get on their end, it doesn't really make a lot of sense for her to live that long, but at the same time, it technically goes against what Leia had already said.
Yeah, it is one of like the major discrepancies in the Star Wars series, but as for a movie that is spanning, that jumps back and forth in the timeline, that's really like the only main discrepancy throughout the series that I've noticed. It's like, okay, you got one mistake. Okay, I'll let that slip.
And for all she knows, she doesn't, she's mixing her up with
her adopted, her adopted mom.
Yeah, like it's a discrepancy, but you kind of think, how else were they supposed to do that? Because it wouldn't have made a ton of sense. I haven't watched it yet. There's I saved it onto my watch later on YouTube. There's all of these like what ifs in Star Wars. Or possible theories, and there's one of what if Padme had survived.
Yeah, no, that one's good.
I haven't watched that one yet, but yeah. So so I don't know, but that's definitely a error later. But this is when Luke says, "You're my sister," and the whole, "I know, I think I've always known."
And it's like, did you though on Hoth?
Yeah.
It's like, I didn't even think George Lucas knew, so I don't think you did either.
So Luke leaves, and Han comes out and sees that Leia's super upset, and this is kind of when he starts to think that there's something going on between them.
Yeah, it's like, I know I've been gone for like a year. It's like, did I miss something between you two? It's like, I don't want to be the third wheel in a relationship that I thought I was already a part of.
And this is the whole, and he, I will say, it also just shows again how much he's grown, because he gets mad, he's about to leave, and then he just turns around, apologizes, and hugs her, and whenever he's essentially being a boyfriend, which is like, as opposed to him just being again by himself on the run. Yeah. So Luke turns himself in, and I love this whole dialogue between him and Darth Vader, because I think I mentioned this at the end of our last episode, that as confident as Darth Vader is that he can turn Luke to the dark side, Luke is just as confident that he can turn Anakin Skywalker back to the
light. Yeah, they're both more or less trying to reach a similar goal, which I think is just like, like father, like son, I guess. And it is really cool because like even like Vader's like, "Oh, you even made your first lightsaber. I'm so proud of you." Like, like they kind of have like this like weird father son moment, and it seems a little awkward that they're even like acknowledging that right now, because they've pretty much been absent from each other's lives up until this point for the most part. It's like, hey, remember that time I almost killed you but didn't? Good times, son. Good times.
Kind of like that in the Lego Ninjago movie, when he and I'm facing what the bad guy's name is, but they're like doing catch. They're like doing catch, and like,
yeah,
like it's the very cliche, like you were a terrible dad, and like they're
weird segue, but great comparison. It's like, hey, remember the Lego Ninjago movie? It's like, of course I do. What?
But no, I wasn't just bringing it up for no reason.
I know. It was just I was not expecting that.
I never bring things up for no reason.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, sure. So Darth Vader is saying, like, Anakin Skywalker is dead and that name means nothing to me now, and he is saying, like, I'm gonna bring you to the Emperor, and he's gonna be your new master. And Luke basically says to Darth Vader, like, because he's saying, like, I'm gonna turn you, I feel the good in you, I feel the conflict. And he says this a couple of times, and at this point, though, Darth Vader says, like, no, I'm not gonna. He's basically gonna just let the Emperor take over and finish his training. And Luke says, "I guess my father is truly dead then,"
Yeah.
which has got to be, like, for him, it's got to be a stick it to him, like a burn, like.
It's like, way to be a dick, son.
Yeah.
But yeah, that also does kind of raise kind of a concern, because Vader at this point should be well aware of the rule of two, or at least know to some degree what that is, because the Jedi in the prequels, like, they knew what that was. So when Vader says, like, "Oh, I'm gonna take you to my master, and you will be his apprentice," well, then what would that make you? There can't be any
So
more than two Sith at a time. There can only be a master and apprentice. And if if Palpatine's going to be the master and Luke's going to be the apprentice, that means you're probably going to get killed, dude.
that's what I never understand, the whole rule of two. So there can only be two
there,
Siths.
there can only be two Sith at any given time, a master and an apprentice, because at a time during the Old Republic, before the rule of two was implemented, there was an entire Sith empire, and they more or less, like, divided into multiple sub factions because they were all vying for power, and they killed each other trying to get that power. So a Sith Lord by the name of Darth Bane, who you'll probably see later, implemented the rule of two to preserve the Sith, to make sure that, okay, we need to kill the Jedi, not ourselves. So we only need to have a master and an apprentice, and that's been carrying on for generations since then. That's been carrying on since the Old Republic all the way to the sequel trilogy. And for some reason, the Disney canon completely changed that, the rule of two. They changed the rule of two, just like, oh no, there can be two masters at a time, and they can both have apprentices. Like, no, that's not what that was. It hasn't been that for a long time.
They all just have to be divided by two.
Yeah.
That's what that
Yeah,
means.
it's like, oh yeah, no, there can
Yeah.
be two. There can be two masters. Like, no, there cannot. They would be rivals, and
Okay.
they would try to kill each other. That's not how that works.
Anyway, where were we? Anakin
Um,
and Anakin. I keep wanting to just call him Anakin now because I like
yeah,
Darth Vader and Luke.
they leave to go to the Death Star, and Luke and the gang, being led by Ewoks, are
Or Han and the gang.
Han and the gang are heading towards the shield generator, being led by a few Ewoks to kind of guide them through.
And I love
Yeah.
this one part. 3PO sees. He's like, "Oh no, one of our friends." As he, like, you see an Ewok just like stumbling off, and they're like freaking out. They're like, "Oh, we're gonna attack them, and we're gonna surprise attack." And then you see the Ewok takes one of the speeders, and then two of them follow, and they're
Yeah,
like,
it's like,
"Oh, well,
all right,
all
there's
right
only one
then."
left. There's only one left. And okay, real quick, during this scene when, like, Han taps the scout trooper's shoulder and, like, runs on the other side of it and runs into, like, a firing squad of troopers, one of the rebel soldiers, you notice, is kind of like a older guy. He's got, like, a white beard and everything. Like, he's looks significantly older than everyone there. Do you have any guesses on who that might be?
Maybe I don't think I really noticed this person. Now I'll go
Okay.
back. But
Um.
anywho,
Well, it
is
was
it a
later.
character or is it a real person
It
that's
is
like
it
in?
is a character that it was, like, originally just some random, like, no name, like, rebel trooper, but they later, like, hey, this looks a lot like a recent character design of a popular
Is it
character.
is it a
And they,
person I would know?
yes, it is one that you would know.
Is it Rex?
It is Rex.
Okay.
That is clone Captain Rex.
See, that's who I was guessing would be in
Yeah,
Mandalorian season
he
2. That's who my
survives.
guess is.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
survives.
I think I knew
Yeah,
that.
yeah, he joins the rebellion, and they, yeah, he Dave Filoni like later confirms like, hey, this guy looks a lot like Rex after the Empire is established. Like, yeah, sure, that's Rex now.
Classic. That's nice.
Yeah, they
That's
basically
nice.
just retconned that specific character, and it's like, all right, that's a retcon I'm okay with.
All right, so yeah, I love that scene. It's so stupid, but
It's so
it's
juvenile.
just like
He literally just like, haha, made you look, and then runs away.
yeah. Um they yeah, and they end up getting inside, but they're unaware that, it's a trap.
Yeah,
Uh
and an entire legion of my best troops are down there. It's like, best troops, my ass.
and yeah, and he's like being a huge like asshole about it, and there's a Family Guy joke about
Oh,
it where they're like, "Geez, what a
I'm
dick."
af- oh, I'm afraid the shield generator will be quite operational when your friends arrive. It's like, geez, don't need to be a dick
Yeah.
about it.
um, and then this is when the Ewoks attack, and the battle is like in full swing, where our
Yeah,
Han and Leia are trying to still get inside, and that's going
yeah,
on. And then the Emperor is just making Luke watch. He's like, "Your friends are gonna die," blah blah blah, and he's like, "Strike me down." And so at first he says he wants Luke to kill him. He wants Luke to kill
yeah.
the Emperor. Wants Luke to kill the Emperor.
He really wants to like push Luke's buttons to see like a Jedi doesn't strike out of anger or any type of emotion like that. So it's like, if I can push his buttons, then like that's a good first step to turning him to the dark side. So he's doing everything he can to push his buttons. Like, dude, I'm not armed. You can kill me right now and end this war. It's like, your lightsaber's right here. I'm not gonna grab it. Look at all your friends dying. See what's gonna happen, pussy. he's like egging him on so hard, and when Luke finally does it, it's like, all right, small victory for me, Emperor thought to himself.
Point one for Palpatine. Yeah,
Yeah,
but that's the
Palpatine
thing.
1,
So
Luke 0.
it's not just so because that's so yeah, acting out on fear, anger, or hate. Those are traits of that's how like a Sith operates.
Yeah,
But that's not necessary. Just because you act on those, you're still using like you're still probably using like the good side of the Force, right?
you
That's what
you
I've
it can, but it's so easy to delve into those
yes.
like emotions, which is why turning to the dark side is so easy and so dangerous, which is why the Jedi try to restrict themselves from showing any kind of emotional capacity, especially when they fight. They try to operate purely on logic and reason rather than on emotion and instinct.
Because that's what I was always wondering. Like, if you act out, are you using the dark side of the Force? Because that's something I've never understood. Because they're saying once you go down, you can't really come out.
It it's kind of like an addiction. Like, the more you use it, the more inclined you are to use it more and more often in any capacity. So it's you really can't dig yourself out of it once you kind of are like succumb fully to the dark side.
Yeah,
I mean, there are like a few instances where like people have kind of converted back and forth from the dark side. One example is Mace Windu. I mean, kinda. He didn't really go full dark side, but like they straight up had to create an entire lore and that explains why he has a purple lightsaber, and that's because he uses both the light and the dark side, combining both a red and blue lightsaber to make his purple lightsaber.
oh, because that's funny. Because Samuel Jackson just wanted a purple so he could point himself out to his
I
mom.
I know he asked like a simple request like, "Hey, can I have a purple lightsaber?" And George Lucas like overnight created an entire lore explaining why he has the one purple lightsaber and gave it to him the next day.
So that's a thing. You can use both.
Kinda. He's like one of the only few who can do it without like fully succumbing. And there was like another like
That's
Jedi
crazy.
who I think you met him at this point, Quinlan Voss. He was the guy who was helping Obi-Wan track down Zero.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
He like went back and forth in like the light and the dark side, and his story kind of gets explained more in like a story that I'm pretty sure is retcon now called Dark Disciple. He's a really interesting character, but that's going off topic. So back to the movie. At this point, like the entire Rebel fleet, like Admiral Akbar, Lando, they're like trying to have a full assault on the Death Star, but it's like, wait, the shield's still up. We got to get out of here. And we go into the famous line of, "It's a trap."
Yeah, that's the thing. There's so many traps in this series, and yet this is the one time the "it's a trap" is like so iconic and becomes such a meme.
It really is. It's like one of the best memes in the entire series, and I'm all for it. It's hilarious how it goes from, this is such a serious moment of like, oh man, we've been tricked, we got to get out of here, to it's a trap, and now I can't stop laughing at this entirely serious scene.
I want to look up, see if this is indeed accurate, but this, I think this was on Instagram yesterday. Scotland's tallest mountain is going to be renamed Kenobi after Ewan McGregor. And there's a meme, and there's a meme with it
Oh
that
yeah,
says, "It's over, Anakin. I
I
am the
am
high
the high
ground."
ground. I saw that on Reddit a couple days ago. I'm sure that's a joke, but at this point, I would not be surprised if it wasn't. And also, on Rotten Tomatoes right now, they are having a poll over like top blockbuster movies, and right now, all three of the Orig Trig Star Wars movies are still like in the running, as well as Revenge of the Sith. They're all up against like other movies, but like
Mhm.
they're all like, looks like they're going to move on to the next round. So in the next round, we're going to have four Star Wars movies going head to head. It's like, all right, which one's the best one?
Oh boy.
It's like,
Oh boy.
yeah, and it's the Orig Trig and Revenge of the Sith. Like, ooh, this is going to be splitting some loyalties right now.
Um. So yeah, and this is when our we're getting our very first like fight for of like Darth Vader and Luke, and like I said, I love this fight scene because the tensions are just so insane, and the stakes are way higher than they were in the last one.
Oh yeah,
And
because this is like the entire rebellion is just like they're throwing everything that they have into this fight, and if they lose, then it's like we have nothing left to fall back on.
and Darth Vader's taunting him as well, like he's hiding out. I love, again, the cinematography in this movie is very underrated. There's a lot of these the dark shadows, and Luke's hiding out, and Darth Vader's just like, fine, I'll just teach your sister. Yeah, like Obi-Wan was right to keep her from me, and basically I'll turn her to the dark side, and that's when Luke really gets furious. And it's just getting more at hand. And this is, and also I do love the fight when they're Luke jumps up onto like an above awning,
Oh yeah,
and
the catwalk.
yeah, the catwalk, and he's just like, I'm not gonna kill you. I can feel it. You're not gonna kill me. You're not gonna turn me. And he's not really Luke's just not he's not really he's kind of egging him more on to join the good side, but it's not
Yeah,
really egging him the way they're egging him. He just is so confident that his father is going to
yeah. I
save him.
honestly, yeah, but I honestly can't watch that scene without thinking, "It's over, Father. I have the high ground." As soon as he jumps up there, I
Oh god,
cannot,
I didn't even
I
think of
cannot
that
think that.
meme.
It's over, Dad. I have the high ground. It's like, son of a bitch. Obi
Wait,
Wan
does
taught you that.
wait, does he say that? He doesn't say
No,
that. That's
no,
just a meme.
in a meme. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I'm like, what? But he'd be like, God, what is it with you people and your high ground?
Did Obi Wan tell everyone that?
God, Obi-Wan, you can't keep a secret. Yeah, so the fight's getting more intense. Well, back on Endor, you're seeing all these Ewoks just attack these
Yeah, they're
stormtroopers,
they're
and
attacking with like wooden clubs and stone spears, and it's like, my entire legion of my best men. It's like, you guys are getting completely trumped by Build-A-Bears. Like, in during the entire fight, I think we see like two Ewoks die.
oh yeah, and one is really sad because he's like pushing him, like, come on, but he's dead, and you're like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah, but they're destroying like all the like speeder bikes with like lassos, like wrapping them around the trees and
it's
clotheslining all
so,
the.
yeah, it's so juvenile,
Yeah, it's
but
like, how is this working? And they have like all these like vlogs that are just smashing and like running over all the chicken walkers, just causing them to explode. The only thing that made sense is like Chewbacca and like two other Ewoks just straight up steal the chicken walker and kill the pilots. And it's like, all right,
yeah.
we have a we have a we have a mech now.
And Han and Leia are trying to get, obviously open the doors, and they try to get R2 over. R2 then it doesn't work.
He gets shot.
Han's just like, I guess I'll hotwire it. I'm thinking, why did you? Couldn't he have tried to hotwire it
Well, when
until like?
when you have a robot that literally specializes
Yeah,
in picking locks, I think we should start with that.
okay, fair enough. And he's like,
Yeah.
I got it, and the door closes because
Yeah,
he's like,
he somehow like activated the blast doors, and then Leia gets shot. It's like, Jesus, like we're seeing like stormtroopers like hitting their marks for like the first time this entire series. Like
yeah.
maybe this is the Emperor's Best Legion.
There are so many jokes in this movie, though, like way more than any of the others. I felt like I was laughing a lot more in this one than I
Yeah.
was in the last one. But yeah, and Leia gets shot, and they're like, "Hey, put your hands up!" And then we see Leia still has her blaster, and then Han says, "Oh, I love you," and she's like, "I know," and you're like, "Ah, they said the thing," and and then she shoots them. And then when they see that Chewie has control of the walker, they decide they have an idea how to get inside. So is it Han that's is it because you only see eyes? Is it Han that goes inside and just
I
saying, "Oh hey, can you guys?" Because I can't tell because
they,
then Han's
I
outside the building.
No, I think it was just a random rebel trooper that was like, here, put on this helmet and get in this thing. They won't
Oh
recognize you,
okay,
hopefully. Because
okay,
as far as I know, I don't know who that is. Who says
okay.
like, it's like, oh, we need reinforcements. They're fleeing into the woods. We need reinforcements to route them completely. It's like, all right, yeah, send a few squads, and then they get ambushed by everyone that's still alive, like right
Because
outside the
okay,
gate.
because I'm like, is that Han? He got in and out of the walker really quick. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
and out of the
they
uniform because he's wearing like the giant like glove that like the driver was before, and the helmet is like, but he's like covering his face completely with like the mic for, yeah, he's using
yeah.
a microphone, but it's a video display. It's like, why that, I don't understand that.
Yeah, they get in, they put, you know, like explosives all over it, and he runs out, and his run is also very comical. This I felt like this fight wasn't. It, it was it was kind of like a very it was yeah. There's a lot riding on it, but it was a lot less intense than you would have assumed because
Yeah.
like the fight at the end of Rise of Skywalker, that was a lot more intense than this was. This was like it seems like a very fun fight
I
to
mean,
watch.
I felt like the real fight was the one in space, like the
Yes,
actual
no,
like space
I
fight, like that
yeah,
had like a lot more tension of like, it's like, okay, we can't
yes,
fight the Death Star head on. The thing's operational. It just destroyed one of our cruisers. We needed to go head on into these Star Destroyers, and like we'll have a better chance against them. And it's like, we're gonna die, but we're gonna take a few of them with us. Like they're going all in on that fight, and it
yeah.
definitely shows because like
I,
it is such a good fight. It is so cool to watch.
I just meant like the fight on Endor was a lot more light and comical than any of the other fights
Yeah.
that are going on or that we even see in this franchise. That's what I've noticed. Anyway, continue.
But yeah, it during like that fight, like we see the the guy in the Imperial officer in Empire Strikes Back who got like 3 battlefield promotions because Vader kept killing his superiors, go from like captain to like admiral in this one because he's like in charge of the Super Star Destroyer when Vader's not there. And it's like, intensify for firepower, intensify for firepower, and a rebel like A-wing just crashes into the bridge and just completely destroys the thing, and it crashes into the Death Star. It's like, all right, that was fast. It's like, man, what a great military career that guy had. He got 3 battlefield promotions and then died.
Honey, I'm home. I got I got 10 battlefield promotions today.
It's like, oh, where does
Because you're
that make
working
you?
so hard? No, because everybody keeps dying.
It's like, oh, where does that make you? I'm Vader's number 2 now. It's like, oh shit, I'm Vader's number 2 now.
Oh god,
If
I'm gonna die.
Yeah, no, the amount of like Imperial like officers committing suicide for fear of like retribution from Vader is it is disturbingly high in the comics and in other medium. It is like there's this one rebel, not rebel, this one Imperial officer who was like in charge of like a Star Destroyer. Is like, all right, I found a few like X-wings, like we need to follow them to their base, and he lost track of them, and Vader is like, all right, you need to tell me where they are right now, otherwise the consequences will be dire. So the guy follows them through an asteroid field, completely destroys his own fighters, cripples his ship, and he finds zero information. It was just two like defunct like desert rebel troops, and it's like, oh shit. And then he just kills himself because he knows Vader's gonna kill him anyway. It's like, that was disturbing. And
So
there are
yeah.
so many stories just along like those same lines, and is ridiculous.
Um. So yeah, the basically everyone's kind of taking the last stand, and Luke and Darth Vader. Basically, it's just Luke and Darth Vader. It's getting very intense and kind of out of control. And finally, Luke has him on the ground. He has his lightsaber at him. He could just kill him, but then he realizes. So just before he cut off, just like he did in Darth Vader had done to him, he cut off his hand to relieve him of his lightsaber, and he sees, just as he's about to like kill him, he sees the like wires sticking out of his hand, just like
It's like, you're a
Luke
robot
has.
too? Me
Yeah,
too.
just like he has. Because earlier in the movie, he like gets like a burn on his hand, and so part of like the wires in his fake hand are sticking out.
Yeah.
And that's kind of when it brings him back, it anchors him back down, and he realizes that like he kind of the whole why he came. He's like, no, I'm not going to do this, and turns to the emperor. Is like, you lost. I'm not going to do this. I'm not your apprentice. I'm not going
Yeah.
to kill my father.
Yeah,
And then
because he fully like almost breaks. Like he cuts off his dad's hand. He is going to kill him, and in that brief like realization, is like, oh no no no, I need to reel this back. I need to reel this back. I beat him. I don't need to go any further.
and this is when the emperor's like, okay, fine, and then doing his like lightning dark force powers on him.
Yeah, it's force
And
lightning.
see, I thought that was just like a Sith power,
It is.
because when Rey does it in Rise of Skywalker, and people, I guess my friends were like, "Oh yeah, Palpatine." I'm like, I thought that was just like especially because in Clone Wars, Dooku does it too. So I'm like,
Yeah.
this is just not specific to Palpatine. Yes, it
Yeah.
is what he is known for, but that's not specific to Palpatine. It's just
Yeah,
a
no,
Sith
it
thing.
force powers aren't genetic. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
not something that you just inherit. It's like, oh, my grandfather could do force lightning. I can do
Yeah,
force
yeah.
lightning. It's like, that's not how the force works. You either have those abilities or not. That's not something that you just inherently gain because of some genetic ability from like someone in your family who knew that. It's not like, oh, my dad had red hair, now I have red hair. That's not how
Yeah.
that works, which is why that scene makes no sense for her to just instantly go with that and
I'm
make
more,
the connection
yeah.
of like, oh, she's a Palpatine. It's like, no, that means nothing. That just means that she taps
Yeah.
into the dark side.
That's what I thought was happening, and everyone's like, "It's Palpatine powers." It's like, but anyway, okay.
No, that it makes no sense as to why that's the defining trait that she's a Palpatine, because she can do that. It's like, no, literally anyone who has a Force can do that. Hell, Yoda can technically do that, and he kind of does.
So we're seeing him like, yeah, use his like lightning on Luke, and Luke, it's like you see the lightning like even in his mouth. It's just like
It's
deteriorating
coursing, yeah,
him, and
yeah, it's coursing through every vein in his body.
he's screaming, and he's like begging Darth Vader to
It's like,
save
Father,
him, Father,
please
yeah, and
help me,
and then
Papa.
yeah, and Daddy, yeah, like, oh, Darth Daddy, yeah, and
No, oh,
yeah, and
I don't like that.
um finally, Palpatine's about to kill Luke, and Darth Vader's just like, no, and then just picks him up, throws him down the shaft, and he automatically, I had to look this up because I realized I never wondered this before, but he automatically, now that he's back on the good side, he starts having trouble breathing. And I didn't get why. And I had to look it up, and it said it was because he was so linked the dark side, that that's what was keeping him alive.
I mean, yeah, for the most part, after a while, like the Force does, he did use the Force to sustain him, and it also didn't help that the Emperor also shocked the shit out of his suit, which also acts as his life support,
Mm-hmm.
further damaging it. So he was damned if he did, damned if he didn't, kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, because I had been thinking before, he had to have known that the Emperor is either probably gonna have him try to kill me, because that's he had Anakin kill Dooku. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
aside from the, I know that it's the rule of two, but
yeah,
like,
yeah. Which I still don't understand, like why he was so like, oh yeah, we should make Luke like your apprentice, like then you would die as well. It's like that's
yeah, rock paper scissors. Who's to die?
yeah, it's like
Yeah,
that's uh, yeah, it's like Vader, you understand that there can only be two. There are three of you. One of you needs to die.
I think he had to have, obviously he had to have known, because he does say when he first tells Luke, "I'm your father," he says we can overthrow the Emperor and rule together
Yeah,
as father and son. So you think he knows, but he's still just so blindly, not really
uh,
blindly following his master. But that's the thing about the Sith that I've noticed. So like even Anakin, like he says, even as like in Revenge of the Sith, he's like, I'm more powerful than the Emperor. I can overthrow him. Like the Jedi don't obviously do this. The Sith are very willing to overthrow anyone for power.
and that was like one of the reasons why the rule of two was implemented, was because they were so power hungry and ruthless. They needed to have some kind of rule to make sure that they could at least sustain themselves in the event of the master dying. They had an apprentice to kind of pick up the slack afterwards, because
Yeah,
once like the master is dead and he can't pass off that information, any of his knowledge, there's only the apprentice left. And if the apprentice and there's no apprentice, then that's it. The Sith are gone,
yeah.
and
Okay.
then the whole galaxy is out of balance.
I think we forgot to mention Lando is in the Millennium Falcon,
Yeah, yeah,
leading the fight in space,
yeah. With
he
his co-pilot Nian Num.
and they basically, the Death Star has been hit. Everybody's evacuating, and Luke is just like dragging Darth Vader, trying to get him to safety. And then, but yeah, Darth Vader's dying, and he says like, "Take off my mask. I want to see you with my own eyes." He's like, "No, it'll kill you." He's like, "No, I'm already dying. Like, don't, whatever. I want to see you with my own eyes." And this is when we first see human, real Anakin Skywalker, and he is so white and pale, and
Yeah,
like the makeup, man, like, and I love this scene just because he says like, you were right about me and all this, and he dies, and Luke keeps saying like, no, I can
I
I
can.
can save you, I
It,
can bring you. He's like, you've already done that.
yeah, it's like you already have. And it's like, aw, tell
And
your
Luke's
t-
crying.
tell
It's
your sister you were right. You were right about me. And then he dies. Um,
And you see like Luke crying. It's a nice, beautiful, touching ending, that there's no way you thought this is where it was going to go when you first meet Darth Vader.
yeah. At the same time as this, Han and Leia they have successfully blown up the shield generator, and Lando and Wedge and a few other like rebel pilots fly into the Death Star to blow it up, and they're being chased by TIE fighter pilots, and a couple of the TIE fighter pilots crash as they're flying through the Death Star, which I think is
Yeah.
kind of funny. And it's like, oh, we need to split up. Like, there's not a lot of room. And it's like, as soon as he says that, a TIE fighter pilot crashes. It's like, oh, ace fighter pilots that go years of training in the academy, and he crashes into his place of work.
His place of
Yeah,
business.
yeah, he
Yeah.
crashes into his office. So it's like, oh, we need to split up. Try to get a couple fighters to follow you out of here. And Wedge and Lando is like, oh, there's the generator. I'll destroy the thing, and you destroy the other thing. And it's like, all right, let's get out of here. And like the whole place like ignites, and like all the TIE fighter pilots that are chasing them, they like blow up because they're not fast enough. Wedge makes it out like with yeah, like
Barely.
no problem whatsoever. And Lando is like,
Oh,
you see
yeah,
the
Lando's
flames
barely.
like slowly like creeping up around like their cockpit window, and you see the flames kind of erupt outside of the tunnel, and then they like launch out like 2 seconds later. It's like, oh man, that was fast.
I forgot to mention this before. Lando's costume in this, so he's wearing like it's supplied obviously by the Alliance, but he is wearing still wearing a cape, just a different cape. And I thought that was funny.
Yeah,
Like he can't not be wearing a cape because he's
exactly.
Lando.
Lando can't go like any scene without wearing a cape, and they have a joke like that in the Solo movie where Han is like going like exploring like the Millennium Falcon because he
Yeah.
is in love with the ship, and he comes
Oh
across
yeah.
Lando's wardrobe, and him and I think her name is like Kira
Yeah.
or something like that, and like it's like how many capes does one
Yeah.
man need?
I forgot about that part.
So yeah, the Death Star is blown up, the Emperor's dead, and Luke has successfully managed to
Not go to the dark side.
not go to the dark side and redeemed Vader at the same time. As like the Death Star blows up, like you see it exploding like on Endor, and Han and Leia's like, I was like, I'm sure Luke wasn't on there at the time. It's like Leia's like, I know he wasn't. It's like,
I
oh,
could
I
feel
won't
it.
come
Yeah.
between you two.
And she's like,
Yeah,
"No, he's my brother." And
it's
then
like
there's that meme of him like cuz he's like, "What?" like so shocked, and there's that meme of him like he's shocked because they kissed in the last movie.
yeah, it's like
But then yeah,
what?
they kiss and then an Ewok like is like trying to hug them and it's super cute. And then you see Anakin. So I guess Anakin does get Darth Vader's body off the Death Star because we he burns it.
Yeah. No, he brings it. Yeah, Luke drags his body back onto the shuttle, and they get out of there, and he has a proper like funeral for him. He has a funeral pyre for him as everyone's celebrating like the with all the Ewoks, which is really funny when you see like Akbar and like a bunch of like the X-wing pilots like dancing with
Yeah,
like all
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
Ewoks, and the Ewoks are like using some like the stormtrooper
Yeah.
helmets as like drums.
Um so and we see yeah, so Luke reunites with his friends and hugs them and I love this part because he looks and he sees Yoda, he sees Obi-Wan, and he sees
And
Anakin. Now, I didn't know this for the
yeah,
longest time because when I had first watched Star Wars, so I guess years ago, obviously it was. I'm guessing it was that actor who we see like when Luke takes the mask off as Anakin Skywalker.
I think it was Sebastian Shaw who initially did that because that's who he was originally credited as. But now in special editions, it's Hayden Christensen who shows up as Force
Which I
Ghost
get
Anakin.
people are annoyed with, but at the same time, that is Anakin Skywalker, and whether we like it or not. And also, yeah, that is how Anakin. And I was debating, like, okay, well, they could have played it off as that's how Anakin Skywalker looked, like how he would have looked if he didn't go to the dark side. But Hayden Christensen is how Darth Vader looked, in a sense when Anakin died. So I don't know. I don't really have an issue with it. I kind of like it because it makes it come full circle. And but I get the
Yeah,
annoyance, but he is. But I feel like part of the annoyance that would they have been as I feel like they would have been as mad even if it wasn't Hayden Christensen, if it was a different actor that played Anakin. But I don't know. I don't have
yeah,
a huge issue with it. I
um,
kind of like it.
yeah. I don't have a huge with it
The first time I
either.
watched it, I didn't know that I
Yep.
know because it was the version I had. I didn't know that it was a different actor that originally was being shown as the Force Ghost. And I remember I was like, "Wow, they did a great job at casting young Anakin Skywalker. He looks so much like this guy." I was just so excited. And then I remember I was hanging out with someone. They're like, "No, that's Hayden Christensen. It was a different guy." And I'm like, "Oh,
There's three people credited as playing Darth Vader. There's David Prose, who is credited as Darth Vader. There's James Earl Jones, who is credited for the voice of Darth Vader, and then there's Sebastian Shaw, who's credited as Anakin Skywalker. And I think Sebastian Shaw is the actor who we originally see as the Force Ghost and as the unmasked Vader. Although the unmasked Vader could also still be David Prose. I'm not sure. It's been a while, and it seems to have like conflicting things in the IMDb.
yeah, yeah,
but backtracking on like the Ewoks celebrating, originally it came out and they had like this like really catchy song. It was like Yub Nub of just like them kind of like singing in like their own language, and now it's like a very much more like melancholy kind of songs like dan dan, like it's all like almost instrumental. But it's kind of funny because someone pointed out to me is like, wait, why are the Ewoks celebrating? They really had no like investment in this fight. And then I remember it's like, wait, they tried to eat Han, Luke, and Chewie beforehand, and they just killed a shitload of stormtroopers. They're not celebrating a victory; they're celebrating a feast. And they have a bunch of like they have a bunch of helmets. Like, where did all the stormtrooper bodies that went with
Oh
those helmets go?
no. Oh well, as long as Luke and Leia and Han don't eat it, Oh no.
But they're part of the tribe. They have to.
They
They
ate
don't want to
the
insult their
God,
hosts.
yeah. They ate the stormtroopers after. That's how much they hated the Empire. But we had talked about this a little bit in the beginning.
Oh
So
my god.
the special edition version, right after we see explosion and we see Luke burning Darth Vader. There are fireworks, and you see
Yeah.
fireworks all across the galaxy. So the Cloud City, Coruscant, and Naboo.
Coruscant,
Coruscant
Naboo, and
and
Tatooine. Yeah.
and Coruscant. We don't really know either any of the Coruscant and Naboo. We don't really know these places until the prequels.
Naboo wasn't in the original. This was a special edition edition.
Yeah, but I mean, I would have been like, "What's this other city?" Like, it wouldn't have if it was enough of them. But the fact that we've been to the Cloud City, we haven't been to these other places. But the Naboo, you can see Gungans like dancing.
Yeah, and you hear them go like, "We saw free!" Like you hear like a Jar Jar Binks esque like voice saying that. It's like,
Yeah,
okay.
I mean,
But yeah,
whatever.
as far I think in the originals, the only planets that we saw were Cloud City, Coruscant, and I think Tatooine.
Yeah,
No, Naboo that's a very recent addition, which I'm fine with. It was kind of a funny addition.
I mean,
It
yeah,
made
it
me chuckle.
makes it kind of yeah, whatever. I don't have an issue with it. I realized I'm like, there's no way this was in the theatrical release of this.
No,
No.
no.
But yeah, I like I like the closing theme. It's the like Ewok victory celebration theme, and it's like I don't know, it's a nice little bang to go out on, and that's the end of the movie, and
Yeah.
that's the end of the Orig Trig.
Yeah. What a note to end on, and it was really fun watching these movies again.
Yeah,
And
I'm pumped for
I
next
I, I
year when we're going to talk the
yeah.
prequels because
Oh
oh boy,
oh
I'm so
jeez.
excited. I'm so excited for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. So before we sign off, I just want to say, first of all, everybody, reminder, we are on Facebook and Instagram at the Movie Reel Podcast. Again, find us on iTunes, Spotify. We just went on Stitcher, as well as YouTube. And yeah, just keep, thanks for listening. Please keep listening. We're having fun. So I hope you're having fun listening to this. I don't know, any last notes, Kevin?
Like, share, subscribe, share with your friends, share it with your grandma. She'll love this stuff. Just, send us some feedback on some other stuff you want us to talk about. We love talking about movies, good, the bad, the ugly, especially the good, the bad, the ugly. Just send us what you got, people. We'll talk about it.
All right, so I'm Samantha Tomlinson.
I'm Kevin Tracy, and you've been listening to Movie Reel. Talk to you later, folks.